Viewers, and welcome back to the South Main Auto Channel. There's our 2010 Hyundai. It's a Genesis. It's got the big 4.6 V8 in it. The car came in. It was an auction car. My used car guy has it, and he noticed it has a battery draw. The battery goes dead instantly overnight, or after it sits for several hours, it goes dead. This little guy ran me through the ringer. Now, I've already got it fixed. Did not do a video on it because I worked on it into the wee hours of the morning, about 2:30 a.m. Got it done. Got it figured out. I'm going to show you my process. Now, this video is not going to be for everybody because it's going to be a little bit of talking, looking at the diagram, showing you what I did to narrow it down, and then ultimately showing you what the problem is, which I think you'll be as surprised as I was. First thing first, I'll show you the meter hookup. Now, this is the amperage draw on the car currently. So 20 to 25 milliamps. That is absolutely perfect. The battery lives back here in the trunk. No, this is not the correct battery for the vehicle, but it is a known good battery that I have, that I installed in here. I'm using our meter in series with the battery, so hooked to negative, and then running the current through the meter, which I just have sitting up here so I could watch it and see, you know, who's hot and who's not. And I've got the battery that was in the car over on the charger, set on nuclear. Now, because I can duplicate the problem, this is how the vehicle came into me. It was steady at 2.5 amps. Never went down. No other telltale signs, you know, looking in the car, nothing was on, so to speak. And yes, you know, when it's drawn to 2.5 amps, naturally, if you're doing these current draws, make sure you trip the trunk latch. If you have the trunk open, the same thing with the hood or the doors, anything that you have open when you're checking draw, make sure everything's turned off, and you can see I have the hood button, you know, depressed with my depressor tool to keep that depressed. So knowing that I had a 2.5 amp draw, the next step is I wanted to take the easy step. I found this underhood fuse box. There's another one over there in the corner. Is it? No, I'm sorry. It's right there. I think the ECM or something was over there. There's a fuse box there. There's a fuse box here. I thought I'd go quick and dirty. I busted out the thermal imaging camera. I stick it over top of the fuse box. And what do I see is I see two relays that are glowing hot, telling me that they are turned on. That's recalibrating there. So we can see that those are running about, 90 degrees or so. Right now the draw is active, just FYI, I've duplicated it. So you can see I marked those two relays with an X because I thought that perhaps that could shortcut my diagnosis. Maybe those relays aren't supposed to be on. I doubt that they are, so I started there. Next logical step was, okay, this relay's on, obviously, this one's on, obviously. Let's see what they are. Are they supposed to be on? So that's what I did. I came over here, we look in its little box, and we see that one is the blower, and then a room LP fuse. So I'm thinking blower, okay, that's odd. That one should not be on, double check, yes, that was the blower. That one should not be on. The car's off, keys out of it, the whole deal. So what do? You get a wiring diagram, because I figured, well, whatever's keeping that on is probably part of the draw, yada yada. Grabbed me the wiring diagram, and this is where all my frustration happened. I'm gonna try to hold you guys there. I'd bring this up on the screen, but this is gonna be a little easier to follow along. I guess the thought process. Let me kind of set some stuff down. So I come down here to this blower relay, and I look on the, before I get a power distribution diagram, I look on the air conditioning diagram so I can see, what's it take to turn this blower relay on? Does it have some kind of afterblow feature where this needs to stay on? And the answer is it doesn't. And what it is this wire here that feeds it is only on the control side of the relay. So it's not the load side. So if you go in and you turn the blower motor on, it doesn't work. It's just the control side inside the relay is staying on because the control side comes out to a ground. So just so you know, so it's just keeping the relay on even though there's no power passing through it. So I'm like, okay, so in order for that to be on, that has to get power from this, what they call the AQS fuse, which is an air quality sensor. So I decided, let's go back to the box. Now that we know this blower relay is on, let's see if this fuse is hot. And it was. This fuse was hot. This fuse was hot for the washer. Okay. The headlamp low relay also had power going to it. So basically, this circuit right here was turned on. Well, question I had was, is it supposed to be? So we go over here, and this goes to number P, diagram 5 of 7. So we go over here to P, diagram 5 of 7. Well, that comes up, and that is fed power from this ignition supply 2 fuse. Alright, so power comes from here. But the power that feeds this also feeds this aircon fuse, it feeds the body unit fuse, it feeds the ECM fuse. So I go to the interior fuse box and say, well, you know, are these all lit up? That one's hot, that one's hot, that one's hot, that one's hot. They all are. But we still need to know where the power comes from. So we follow it down and around. This one has push button start, so we go to number L, diagram 2 of 7. Alright, not a big deal. Let's go to diagram 2 of 7. Oh, I did not print this one in color, did I? And then we need to find L, wherever L is, right here. This is L. This comes from an ignition relay. But look, this relay is only when the ignition is turned on. And our ignition is turned off, so I thought, aha! The smoking gun! This relay's stuck on, we're gonna yank the relay, bada bing, bada boom. I pulled the relay out, and we still have power on both sides of it, on the load side. So we have power here, we have power here. And because we have power here, it comes down, and it feeds this fuse, and that fuse, and this fuse, and this fuse, and this fuse, and this fuse. Everything is lit up, even though we have the relay out. This relay is gone, but the entire circuit that it feeds is still powered up. So I'm like, okay, you have my attention. And at that point, I should have just left and went home. Thought about it for a little while, but we persisted. So what I wanted to know is, how can this circuit be all powered up? You know, this circuit and all of these circuits, how can these all be powered up when the relay is gone? Well, the answer to that is, we could have a short, clearly. We could have one of the many items be shorted and back feeding into the circuit and, you know, throwing power down through everything else backwards. And there's a lot of stuff on here to look at. You know, all kinds of sensors, the, you know, power distribution module, tons of stuff. The cluster, you know, instrument panel module, lots of things. So I had to kick in some logic where, how can we start breaking this system down? How can we break it in half? You know, what am I going to do? How am I going to determine if it's, you know, is this coming from the inside fuse box? Is it coming from the outside fuse box? You know, what are we going to do next? So to answer that question for you, what I do next is I pull this fuse out of the ECM. Everything stays powered up. That should have killed all of these. If any of these circuits were back feeding in here, pulling that fuse should have killed power. Pulled that fuse, nothing. Pulled this fuse, body unit 1 fuse, nothing. Still, you know, everything's powered up here. Pulled the aircon fuse, nothing. Pulled the ignition key 2 supply fuse, boom, everything goes dead. So at that point I'm thinking, boom, we got the smoking gun. We know. So I pull this fuse, ignition supply 2, this fuse goes dead, this fuse goes dead, this fuse goes dead. And where this wire comes out and goes over to L and goes all the way over to our relay, remember it goes back to this ignition relay, this also goes dead. So we're going to draw this here. Fuse pulled. This one, dead. This one, dead. This is how I labeled it on my diagram, just so I could make sense of all this. This one, dead. And this one, DOA. So that is a great clue. So with this fuse out, everything here is dead. So okay, so remember this comes down to P, all right, which is going to come back into here. So I come into here, this fuse still has power on it, this fuse still has power on it. I'm like, what in the thunder is still happening here? I hope everybody's following along, because I wasn't. So you're telling me, so what I deducted from this is that these babies still have power on it. When I pulled this fuse, it killed all of this. So that tells me, right there, Johnny on the spot, that this interior fuse box, this fuse box up in the corner, is sending power via these two circuits, one of the two, out in this direction, over in this direction, and up to this little guy, because that is the only way it can happen. Because I kill this, it kills everything over here. So I'm like, great, boom, I got the smoking gun. I held that smoking gun quite a few times, let me tell you. We got it. So I'm like, something shorted here. The wiper module shorted, sending power, back up through headlight relay. Somewhere this circuit's picking up power, sending power over to the right side instrument panel fuse box, and keeping everything turned on. So I yank out that fuse, I yank out that fuse, which technically should have eliminated all of this. It should have eliminated all of these wires. It should have eliminated the windshield washer relay. It's essentially like I took a pair of scissors and I cut that wire in half and I cut that wire in half. Well, guess what? This wire still had power on it. 12 volts, battery plus, and it would light a headlight. Lots of current, and my current draw was still there. So I'm like, WTF, I says. I'm like, the only plausible solution at that point, and I even wrote it down on my original set of notes. There's my original set of notes. Let me find it. My hypothesis was that wire absolutely 100% has a short to battery positive. That's all it can be. And I was right. This wire, the only way, with all the fuses removed on both sides of it, all of these fuses removed, and we know when we remove that, these died. Hold on, wind. And with these fuses removed, there is nothing logical except for the fact that this wire, this dark blue wire that goes from box to box, had to be shorted to battery positive. Okay? The next step was finding it. How can I find out, where is this sucker shorted? Because it runs from that fuse box, it goes all the way across town, and it goes inside the car over here. Let's go have a little gander. But before we do that, let me hook up the battery so I don't blow my meter. So I look up a diagram, and I find that you can split the harness in half, because the fuse box that we took the big 30 amp out of is over there on the passenger side. And there's a connector down here. Oops, probably a little dark in here, fellas, but there's a connector right down here in the corner. I'm with my pinky where you can't see. That goes from the outside wiring harness to the interior wiring harness, and then runs over to that side of the car. So I disconnected it here to determine, where's my short? Is my short somewhere here in the dash, or is the short outside in that harness out there? And the answer was, once I unplugged it, there was still power on the vehicle harness side, not the interior. So I'm like, hallelujah. Simple enough, I said. I got a diagram for the wiring harness. Where is it? It goes from the bottom of the fuse box, pin 27, and it comes all the way across the back of the car, and then it goes inside the car right here. And this harness is completely intact, just visual inspection. I didn't even pull it out. I mean, nothing's been touched. Not that it can't be shorted, but you can see that nobody's been meddling in things they ought not be meddling in. So I was like, the likelihood of that wire being shorted is pretty low, but let's carry on. We got to go with the facts. The other fact is, we know that this wire, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is shorted to battery positive. Now, it could be an actual direct short in the wire. Let's say it rubbed through and is touching another positive circuit, or the fuse box could be failing internally, which at this point, that's what I had to determine. Is this wire shorted to power, or is our fuse box shorted internally, to a different circuit, and that's what's keeping this powered up even though our fuses are removed? Is there something in here that's the green crusty coming across here and touching this one and carrying a fair amount of current? So that was something that we had to deduct. The only way I could figure out how to do that was to remove the fuse box. I removed the fuse box. I knew that my blue wire here came in on pin 27 on the bottom of the fuse box. So I pull the fuse box out, I flip it over, because it's all bulkhead connectors. I take a battery, 12 volts, I attach it to pin number 27. With that pin 27 powered up, I had battery positive. Oops. ran it right down with a little jumper wire, hooked it on there, and then I took my little test light, and in theory, with that single pin, that's the only pin that's powered up, I should add power on my washer fuse, I should add power on my AQS fuse, which I did. But if I'm determining whether or not that fuse box is shorted, I went through and touched every single pin on that whole box. And I'll be jiggered, I got to a third fuse that was powered up. And I said, ha ha, there's my smoking gun. So once I found that, you know, the AQS fuse is powered, the washer fuse is powered as it should be, but then we had this third mystery fuse, this third pin. I was just looking at the pins on the bottom of the fuse box. I'm like, what in the thunder is this coming from? You know, I was like, well, there's our short. You know, that's it. But, you know, what is it? You know, what can I tell what circuit it is? And let me tell you what, this is where the 2 a.m. thing came coming in, because I am looking, because I know what pin it is on the bottom of the fuse box, because this tells me, you know, like, you know, here's pin 16 and, you know, 29 and 20. And I don't recall exactly what number it was right offhand. I want to say it was like pin 6 or something like that. And I am looking for like ever on diagrams to try to find, you know, this pin number for connector number 2 on the bottom of that fuse box to find out what in the thunder is that pin. And it is nowheres on any diagram. And I pull up the connector diagram and it's not there. Everything's like NA, it's missing, blah, blah, blah. So I flipped the fuse box over. And I said, okay, well, if I got something to pin hot on the bottom, then I have to have a pin hot on the top. So I start going down my fuses and I'm checking, nothing. This is, well, I only have power supply to number 27 on the bottom, mind you. I'm just this AQS fuse and this washer fuse. These two down here in the corner, the only two that are supposed to be hot. So then I start, you know, I check those and I come up, check, microphone, check, boom. I hit that fuse right there, this third fuse in. Let me get my meat nuggets out of the way. This fuse right here is hot. I mean, hot to trot. Got power on both sides. AQS fuse power, washer fuse power like it's supposed to be, mystery fuse power. So I said, all right, there you go, you big dummy. Let's find out what that circuit runs and why in the thunder it is shorted to these two. So we come over to the map that Hyundai left us. One, two, three, four. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the fourth one. This one here. That's our mystery circuit that's shorted. 1, 2, 3. What's that? That's a blank hole. Oh, it is? Oh, well, let me show you something. I'll show you that right there. There's our 2 1/4, 2.5 amp draw that never ever disappears, ever in its life. Let's go down here into the old fuse box and let's pull out this fuse. Now let's come up here and we're gonna wait just a little bit. I'm gonna show you something. After a few seconds, that drops down to 1.4 amps. So then after just a little smidge, we're down to, let's lower our scale here, 170 milliamps. Now when it gets better, because it'll drop down to, after about 10 minutes and all the modules time out, it'll go back to our 25 milliamp draw. And this, folks, is all results of a fuse from a mystery circuit that powers up a whole bunch of other crap that it shouldn't. And it does not belong, because there's a blank spot. Somebody was so kind at some point in this car's life before it went to the auction, or maybe this was the reason it went to the auction, that they looked under here and said, hey, look, there's a blank hole. Maybe I'll put a fuse in it. And they did. And when they do, your draw that is currently at 176 milliamps, you put it in, listen, some stuff's going to start powering up here. Hear that? Let me push that in a little bit. They put in the mystery fuse. And there we have our big honky-tonk draw again. Wicked awesome. Not really. I was not super excited. And we pull it out. And after a little bit, our draw will drop back to nothing. And when it's pulled out, all of our fuses that have power, that shouldn't have power, all the power disappears. Kind of hard to believe that one little fuse in the wrong spot could cause so much frustration in my little world. And I should have brought the camera along as I was doing this process, but it took me a little while to get direction because so many odd things were powered up that I was finding that technically shouldn't have been, or technically couldn't have been. So there was some doubt that the colored wire diagrams are right. So I, got the OE diagrams, looked on those. Okay, yeah, the OE was right. The coloreds are easier to read because I can stack them all together instead of having multiple, OE diagrams and go from here to here to here. I like to be able to print out about 7 of them and spread it out like a little road map, and away I go. So I did get a little bit sidetracked on that simply because I would look at stuff that was seemingly impossible. These 2 fuses removed, this entire circuit should be dead. It's not hooked to anything else. However, the circuit was staying live. So I guess I don't know really the point of this video other than perhaps to say, stick to your diagnostic plan, get a diagram. And I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments be like, oh, the first thing I check is the fuse. I say, screw that. All right, I'm just going to be frank. We get that a lot in our videos. People are like, oh, I always check the fuse. What fuse do you check? All right, you pop the lid. Yeah, all the fuses are there. I get direction. I collect the data, and then I follow it back. Yes, it was as a result of a fuse. Would I have known that just by looking at the fuse box? No, and I say that every single time when we, trace the circuit back to a fuse. And I'm not talking just, blown fuse. I'm talking, something, like this case here. So, we collected the data. We've seen all this stuff stays on or is turned on, and made a lot of deduction. This has to be short in that wire or short in the fuse box. It is the only thing it can be. 100%. There is nothing else it could be. And then we had to eliminate, is it that section of wire? Which, section of wire, it's a fuse box. First thing I started with fuse box because I thought it was the easiest thing to test. Yank it up and out, and I explained all the rest to you. I did my test, found that third leg that was hot that shouldn't be, and said, well, there we are. Fuse box is shorted, or it's, something else, which in this case, it happened to be something else. Anywho, it's kind of a long night, and found out that OEM diagrams are correct, color diagrams are correct, and we were correct in our assessment, but it is what it is. So hopefully this encourages you guys to do it right, and just stick to your guns no matter what you're going to find. Collect your data, get a diagram, look at it, and know what the tests are going to be before what you expect to see. When you check this wire, what do you expect to see, and write it down on your diagram and go do that test. And if that's not the results you get, you don't keep going backwards until you get to the epicenter. Where did it begin? So leave it at that. You guys go down in that comment box, leave me a question, comment, or criticism or concern. While you're down there, subscribe, ring the bell, and all that. Just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.